Hello everyone! It's Miss Angela from the Fort Worth Public Library. Welcome back to another Fort Worth Nature Center Discovery Club story time. Today we are talking about herons. Do you know what a heron is? It's a type of bird with a really long neck. Our song is going to be to the tune of the wheels on the bus, so I think you can join in right away. It's going to be all about herons. The first verse is, "The heron's neck stretches out and in." So you're going to have to move your neck along with me. Are you ready? The heron's neck stretches out and in, out and in, out and in. The heron's neck stretches out and in all day long. When herons are hunting, they stand very still and they only move their heads to watch their prey. So our next verse is, the heron's head goes side to side. The heron's head goes side to side, side to side, side to side. The heron's head goes side to side all day long. Now, herons have very long beaks, so we're going to put our hands up at our mouth for this next one and say the heron's beak goes snap, snap, snap. The heron's beak goes snap, 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 snap. Snap, 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 the heron's beak goes snap, 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 all day long. And the last one, all birds have wings, and the heron's wings are going to go flap, flap, flap. The heron's wings go flap, 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 flap. The heron's wings go flap, 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 all day long. Great job, everyone! Our story today is called Heron and Hummingbird, and it's from the Hitchiti tribe of Native North Americans, and it's retold by S.E. Schlosser. Once upon a time, Heron and Hummingbird were friends. Even though one was tall and gangly and awkward, and one was small and sleek and fast, they both loved to eat fish. Hummingbird ate small fish like minnows, and Heron preferred the big ones. One day, Hummingbird said to his friend, "I am not sure there are enough fish in the world for both of us to eat. Why don't we have a race to see which of us should own all of the fish?" Heron thought that was a very good idea, for she liked the little fish too. They decided that they would race along the river, and the finish line would be an old dead tree that they both knew. Whichever of them sat on top of the tree first would own all the fish in the world. They started out the next morning. Hummingbird zipped along, flying around and around Heron, who was moving steadily forward, flapping her giant wings. Then Hummingbird would be distracted by the pretty flowers along the way. He would flit from one to the other, tasting the nectar. When Hummingbird noticed that Heron was winning, he hurried to catch up with him, zooming ahead as fast as he could and leaving Heron far behind. Heron just kept flying steadily forward, flapping her giant wings. Hummingbird was tired from all his flitting. When it got dark, he decided to rest. He found a nice spot to perch and slept all night long. But Heron just kept flying steadily forward all night long, flapping her giant wings. When Hummingbird woke in the morning, Heron was far ahead. Hummingbird had to fly as fast as he could to catch up. He zoomed past the big, awkward Heron and kept going until Heron had disappeared behind him. Then Hummingbird noticed some pretty flowers nearby. He zip-zipped over to them and dipped his tongue in. He was enjoying the pretty scenery and didn't notice Heron flapping past him with her great wings. Hummingbird finally remembered that he was racing with Heron and flew as fast as he could to catch up with the big, awkward bird. Then he zipped along, flying around and around Heron, who kept moving steadily forward, flapping her giant wings. For 2 more days, Hummingbird and Heron raced toward the far distant riverbank and the dead tree that was the finish line. Hummingbird had a marvelous time sipping nectar and flitting among the flowers and resting himself at night. Heron kept up a steady flap, flap, flapping of her giant wings, moving forward through the air all day and all night. Hummingbird woke from his sleep the morning of the 4th day, refreshed and ready to go. He flew zip-zip toward the riverbank with its dead tree. When it came into view, he saw Heron perched at the top of the tree. Heron had won the race by flying straight and steady through the night while Hummingbird slept. And from that day on, all of the fish have belonged to Heron, while Hummingbird sticks to the flowers that he enjoyed so much along the race. Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's time to pass it over to Mr. Michael at the Nature Center to tell you more about herons. See you next time.
Good morning, everyone. This is Michael Perez with the Fort Worth Nature Center Refuge. I'm going to welcome you to another edition of Discovery Club. Thanks, Miss Angela, for starting us off with story time. Really appreciate you doing that. Now we're going to continue on and talk more about herons. And I'm here at Greer Island. It's on the southeast part of our property, and it's a great place to find herons. Now, when Miss Angela and I were talking about what we wanted to discuss this week, she mentioned herons, and I thought that's a fantastic idea because we have lots of herons here at the Fort Worth Nature Center, different species of them. But I also want to include egrets as well because they're very, very similar. Now, this area behind me, this is Greer Island. This is a great place to find egrets and herons, and we're going to talk a little bit about them. And hopefully we'll have one fly in. That would be really cool. Now, as we do with each week in Discovery Club, we talk about if we're talking about an animal, we talk what type of animal it is. So we'll go through all that. So we're going to discuss what a type of animal a heron and an egret is. We're going to talk about adaptations. And I know we've talked about adaptations before in previous Discovery Clubs. So we'll talk about adaptations and what allows a heron and an egret survive in this type of habitat behind me. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'll show you some images of different species of herons and egrets we have here at the Nature Center and just across Texas. So we'll show you a little slideshow of those birds, and we'll conclude our Discovery Club. So let's get started and talk about what a heron is. Now, herons are birds. Okay, we talked about the different characteristics of birds when we talked about owls, when we talked about what are some other animals? I think we talked about some other birds before. I can't remember. It's been a while. We've been doing Discovery Club virtually for quite some time now. I can't even keep track of what we've discussed. So anyway, we're going to talk about what makes a bird a bird. Now, as we said in previous Discovery Clubs, what makes a bird are these things right here. Now, most people are going to say they fly, which you are correct in saying that. But feathers is what makes a bird a bird. It separates all the other vertebrate groups from itself. So let's talk about feathers. Now, feathers are very important because it gives them their color, overall color, helps us identify different types of birds. But more importantly, these feathers are important for other reasons, such as flight. They're helpful for keeping them warm, so keeping them dry. So that's the importance of feathers. Now, these are very lightweight too, as we've discovered when we talked about owl feathers and so forth. Now, this feather here is not from a heron. I couldn't find one, but I did find this. We have this feather here. It's from a vulture. Now, before I proceed, I want to make sure you understand that these feathers I have, and I'm going to show you an actual taxidermy or what a heron and egret look like close up. But I want to let you know that we actually have permission from the United States Fish and Wildlife Service that allows us to keep these feathers and hold these feathers for educational purpose. At one point in time, people would hunt birds just to get the feathers, to use them for pins, put them in hats, and as a result, the bird population went down significantly. So they made it a law that you couldn't do that anymore. So we actually have permits, a license that allows us to have these. So they're very resilient. If they get messed up like this, like I showed you that before in other Discovery Clubs, they can actually reconnect. And on each one of these little gray pieces you see, those are called barbs, and each one of these barbs has a little hook, and they latch onto each other. Imagine if a bird messed up its feathers, and how would it fix it? Well, it uses its beak, but if it didn't have a beak, how else would it fix it? Well, it wouldn't be able to. And it would take too much energy, too much time and energy for them to grow a new feather. So that would be really, really hard for them. So they use their beak and they comb their feathers back in place. And it's a process called preening. That's preening, preening. So that's a feather, and that's what makes a bird a bird. That's the one feature that separates them from all the other animals we have around us. So that's what makes a bird a bird. Now, birds have beaks. They have, feet that are adapted to certain areas. whether it be perching, walking in the water, amongst the water, and so forth. So they have a lot of other features that help them survive. Now I want to show you, it's called a taxidermy mount. Okay, so this bird here, at one point in time, was alive, and unfortunately passed away, and we don't know the causes, and we didn't harm it to hurt it to get this particular bird, but we have it so we can educate you and talk to you a little bit about it. So as I said, birds have feathers. Kind of weird, right? I have this bird around me. There you go. But a couple of things I want to show you and talk about adaptations now. Let's transition. We talked about what a bird is. It's an animal that's covered in feathers. It has feet and a beak designed for the things it likes to eat, and particularly hanging out in this type of area here are the herons and egrets. But let's talk about adaptations. An adaptation is a physical or a behavioral trait that allows them to survive in their environment. So as far as the physical traits that this bird has, if you look, it has a very pointy bill, the spear-like bill. Now these birds, if they live along the water's edge, they hang out there, what do you suspect he's going to want to eat? That's right, he's going to want to eat fish. You know, things he finds near the water's edge, frogs, and so forth. So this bird here, egrets and herons, they have this spear-like pointy bill, and they use this long neck to generate power, and they spear and grab their food. So if you watch them, they'll kind of creep along the water's edge, sit really still in the water as well, watching for fish and frogs and things like that to move around, so they use that powerful neck and spear their fish. Now one thing to keep in mind as they are spearing and going after fish, you think that their esophagus or their throat and so forth will be injured, but actually that sits behind the bones of their neck, so it's protected. If they hit the water, it doesn't hurt their esophagus, their throat, or anything like that. Their neck actually protects them. Another feature for herons and egrets are these long legs. Look at these long legs. If you're going to live near water or even walking into water to find your food, you got to have long legs so you can get into the water and still be able to be above the water, right? So having long legs allows them to survive in an aquatic habitat such as what is behind me. In addition to a long neck, spear-like bill, long feet or legs, are these long toes. Look at how long those digits are, those toes are. And that's really important because as they're walking in the water to look for fish, it's muddy down there, right? Along the water's edge, it can be really muddy. How many of you've been fishing or you're walking along the water's edge and then your foot gets stuck in all that mud and you're trying to pull it out and unfortunately your shoe stays into the mud, right? Yeah, it's probably happened to some of y'all. Well, having these long toes right here allows it to get out of the mud with greater ease, so they can walk in the mud and not get stuck. So what a cool adaptation or series or compilation of adaptations that allow them to live in an aquatic environment. Now, as I said before, there's so many different types of egrets and herons in our area. Some like this is called what we call a great egret. Now, great egrets are white. They have a white plumage, and you would think, well, that would be a disadvantage. It just sticks out. But actually, it's a great advantage because if it's standing in the water and it's looking for fish on a day like that right now, it's like, oh man, the sun's in my way, okay? Well, that's a benefit to them because as they're above the water and a fish or a frog, as they look up, the sun just blinds them and the white blends in with that bright sun, and they don't know that there's a predator there. And the great egret just sits there and waits and sees a fish come by, and then he goes in and grabs it. So this white plumage actually is very beneficial for egrets. So that's a big benefit. Now herons usually have more of the color. Now our egrets in our area, we have three main ones. The three main egrets we have are great egrets, cattle egret, and we have snowy egret. Those are the three main ones we have, and they're all white. Now herons actually display more color. Like a great blue heron has some grayish colors. We have green herons that have like greenish colors. We also have little blue herons. They actually start, these other herons will start off with white plumage as well, but then they get their color and start transition, go through molts where they lose their feathers and get new feathers, and they get the color that they have that you see when you're walking along the water's edge. So that's a little bit about their plumage and how effective it is or how helpful it is when they're trying to find food. Now, the things that these herons and egrets like to eat, as we mentioned, fish, frogs, some will eat crabs, all the little critters that are swimming around in the water, they're going to be going after those things. And they play an important role in the aquatic habitat because they help maintain a nice balance in the ecosystem. Because you never want to have too much of something in a particular ecosystem or habitat. If you have too many of the fish, they're going to deplete the natural resources around them and not provide for all the other animals that live there. So these herons and egrets will eat the fish, eat the frogs, and so forth, as a way of keeping everything in nice balance, so there's not too much of it. And then you think, well, an egret, well, what's going to eat an egret? Well, around here, alligators. And we do have alligators. In fact, these birds here, generally around January and February, they're going to build these nests way high in the trees, and there'll be one after another. It's like a complex apartment complex of nests for egrets and herons. We call that a rookery. So amongst the rookery, you have all these birds, adults that are tending to their young birds, and you have the young birds in the nest. But then down below, at the foot of that tree in the water, lurks an alligator. And they look for any opportunity for a chick to fall down or a young bird near the water and so forth. So that's what keeps these birds in balance. So everything is keeping everything in check so that this habitat here thrives, and these birds thrive as well. So we learned a little bit about what a heron and egret is. It's a type of bird. Talked about the features of a bird, the diagnostic feature, that one feature that separates them all, which is feathers. We talked a little bit about adaptations. We talked about the spear-like bill, the long neck to generate power, the long legs to stand in the water, and then the long digits or toes to help them get through the mud. And then we talked about the different types, like egrets and herons, and we also talked about how these animals play a role in keeping a nice balance in the ecosystem. So, so those are little things we should know about these guys and what makes them so special. So I'm gonna transition and show you some slides, a little slideshow of different egrets and herons we have here at the Nature Center, as well as around the state of Texas. Aren't you amazed at all those different types of egrets and herons we have, the different shapes and the colors, and it's such a cool group of birds. And I hopefully seeing those pictures and learning a little bit about them, and with this lesson that you want to come out to the Nature Center or a waterway, wetland near you, so you can see those egrets and herons hanging out looking for food along the water's edge. So well, that's going to conclude our Discovery Club for this week. Hopefully you learned a little bit about herons and egrets, get an appreciation for them, and encourage you to get outside and discover nature on your own as well. There's so many things that you can discover, and so many things we've discovered through these virtual programs we've been putting together for you. So hopefully you go out and learn more about all those different facets and parts of our natural world. So thank you for tuning in, and next week we're going to be at the same time, same place, and we're going to be learning a little bit about camouflage and how animals camouflage themselves. And I just mentioned one of those examples in the form of an adaptation with that great egret with the white plumage and blending in with the environment because of the sun. So that's one way of an animal camouflaging. So you kind of are on track, and you kind of know what we're talking about when we refer to camouflage. So tune in next week and you'll learn more about camouflage. So until then, thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye, guys.